Here we go. This is Los Angeles, California. Kind-hearted swordsmen don't slay your dragons here. These men desire plastic breasts, rib cages poking through unaged skin, and have a passion for emotional detachment. She had wished that she were this unobtainable, feelingless Barbie doll. That is, up until that moment in traffic. Tiana decided to change her path. She decided to make some serious moves towards a different life, to leave the life of wallowing in the misery of her fated sweetheart and schedule of unhappiness, and devote all of her energy into recreating a whole new world. Perhaps only a small universe to her, but either way changes had to be made. Cigarette packs went quicker than the change in her pockets, and she found it hard to sleep and even harder to wake up, disappointed at yet another day before her. She wanted to wake up excited about things ahead, not detesting another day and her calendar of events. She concluded that chasing this fleeting spotlight of perfection was going to leave her insecure, disappointed, and feeling like a failure. Her grandparents lived in the cutest house by the lake in Prescott, Arizona. At times like this, she found herself wanting nothing more than curling up on the couch with her grandma and granddad watching television. She missed even sitting on the front porch, watching the stars twinkle down on her like diamonds against black satin clouds. She missed heading downtown for a slushie or a sundae and spotting the adorable retired couples still showing the sweetest forms of public affection. Even though the memories of her and her ex-boyfriend Michael triggered some of the Arizona house shopping, she couldn't let that stop her. That was then and this was now. Prescott was her family's hometown, and the same life she wanted to have with him is what she wanted to have regardless. She couldn't see herself waiting tables for the rest of her life, or ending up like one of the old party chicks like some of her loved ones. She needed a clean, fresh start, new air and fresh faces around her. Her chilled fingertips turned the knob for the heater as she glanced at the shiny sports car pulling up next to her. What is it with people and flashy stuff? What is it with all this superficial LA stuff that has everyone in this spiritless quest for cash? People can't survive without it, and it is considered the universal language of the world. She concluded that life is full of love-hate relationships, but the strings of this confused web weaved around her and started to smother her. She made an internal promise to not be this retarded spider she saw herself as any longer. You get burned if you play with fire, and she was tired of tampering with flames. Her brain was absorbed with curriculum, and her heart filled with questions. It was time to push aside fears and the past, and let go of inhibitions for once and for all. The missing void inside her had ripped even larger, and she knew what needed to be done. Flight. There was no path to follow. Her direction was unclear, but the season changed, and she needed to seek a new foundation. The longing needed to become belonging to something bigger. Not a person's possession, but to become her own person. But finding that seemed as hard as finding her way out of bumpers and headlights. As quick as a wisp of hair brushes into one's eye, a cold chill called reality stampeded her like a herd of wildebeests. Invisible twinkling light bulbs clicked on, and with a turn of a signal, she was finally off of her exit. How could she get there? What would she do single once she got there? Was there a future there? Is this the future she truly wanted? 2 circular lights hit the all-too-familiar driveway garage door. After a few button clicks and the collection of belongings she lugged along with her, she pitter-pattered her way into the front door. She twisted the knob and heard the voice of her sweetest companion in a language that was based entirely off of emotion. Whiskers and white paws, topped with big yellow eyes, ran towards her. She stretched apart her rosy lips and let her pearly whites dance from ear to ear. Muffin ran through her legs, and she made a beeline for her room. Finally, she was home. Keys and purse hit the bed, almost as fast as Tiana collapsed in it. School, money, these were the things she needed to figure out answers for. Numbers and graphs, calculating and accounting, these things were not a cup of tea for her. Getting from point A to point C seemed a lot more difficult than one would initially perceive. School needed to be completed, so in the meantime, in the downtime, it was simply an opportunity to get ready. She needed gosh, my eyes are watering. Sorry, guys. She needed as much time as she could get to prepare herself to move forward to another state. As soon as her eyes closed, she left to dreamland, a place where worries dissolved like airborne into a glass of water. Time, as always, wasn't on her side, and the blur of self-imagined fantasies faded back into her unhappy reality. She walked, she wrote, she sang her heart out, saw people, hid in the silence of solitude, made plans, broke plans. Weeks passed, and still the void she was missing remained. Days couldn't be told apart, and heaven seemed as far away as a field of four-leaf clovers. Suddenly she found herself babbling on and on about Michael yet again, explaining how each dagger was thrown and where each blistering shard had sliced to a room full of the uninterested. These friends were more focused on how quickly the blunt was circulating than how the tears somehow held themselves back and stayed from dripping off the glazed, two round surfaces of hazel. The binder wires were clamping much too tightly on the unfinished paper titled Tiana. A person could die in this madness, she thought to herself. This statement almost forced her to take steps back and look at her life in its true form. The time warp had to end. She couldn't keep winding around Olympic logos of a path and call it life anymore. In that moment of realization, the even more confusing occurred. Everyone she was hanging out with started to break away from the scene and started relationships. She was happy for them, but she still wondered why she wasn't one of those happy people. Would she ever be? Could she ever be? The gym was the next addiction. The squat machine and her free weights were her insane way of dealing with sexual frustration, heartbreak, and life ache. Aerobics and cycling, waterworks and Pilates. Even if she was lonely, she had firmer thighs without him. The thing that was actually funny was that she spent her time watching The Wedding Planner and Runaway Bride over and over again. Somewhere in this newly discovered obsession with her cat, she found the ticket to her dreams. With a cut of the scissors, diluted bleach spray, distressing tools, money saved from go-go dancing, and her final check saved from a restaurant completely devoted to women's breasts and chicken wings, she finally found herself slightly higher on the ladder. She was no longer just the cute, dependent student dreamer, but an almost independent entrepreneur. She rounded up all of her beautiful and handsome contacts, primped, dressed them, and watched them parade in front of the camera like supermodels. She sat for days and designed, sketched, researched, patterned, dyed, bleached, washed, tattered, cut, ripped, and hand-glued crystals on denim. Then she sat for days on the computer until her eyes surely had added a million pulsating veins. She couldn't even piece together a normal sentence after all the writing she did. But nothing beat the satisfaction of when she scooted her rolling desk chair back and stared at the huge pile of finished type stapled and divided perfection. It was better than sex.